One day, a family was going on a trip to Germany because they had sick relatives there. Sam is 8, Nicole is 10, and Brett is 15. Their parents, Kayla, who is 55, and Jane, who is 58. The relatives were very sick from the plague that was spreading. After they finished packing, they all went to the airport to get on the plane to fly to Germany. It was going to be a very long flight because they lived in Oklahoma. They had to wait a very long time for the flight. Sam was getting irritated because she couldn't go and do anything. Nicole, Brett, Kayla, and Jane were all on their phones and reading and talking about things. When they finally got on the plane, the attendant was acting funny, but only Brett noticed this. He didn't say anything. When they got in their seats, Brett, Sam, and Nicole were all sitting together. Their parents were sitting by themselves. Brett was stuck in the middle, and the girls on either side of him. This made him mad because he couldn't sleep, and Sam kept bugging him. Nicole fell asleep the whole trip, but she was sleeping on Brett the whole time. The trip wasn't a straight flight. They landed in Portugal and stayed there overnight so they could get a good night's rest for a long trip ahead. Everyone was being very sanitary because they didn't want to get infected by the sickness. The kids did not want to go and risk it, but they didn't have a choice. Next morning, they went to the airport for the flight to Germany and to see their family. When they got on the plane, Brett didn't think that something was right. The pilots were having some technical difficulties, so they had to stay on the plane for a while. It was almost full except for 2 seats. The helpers on the plane were not acting human. Brett started to look around and noticed that there were projectors in the airplane, but he didn't know why. When they were about halfway through their flight, the attendant came by to ask if the kids were okay. They said yes, but the attendant was slurring her words, and her face didn't look normal. It had a weird, sketchy-like texture. Brett was starting to figure things out as the plane went on. The projectors in the plane were for the attendants. They weren't really real, yet they were talking like real human. Brett thought that they had real people talking on the earth, that the people weren't really on the plane. When the time came to land, it was delayed a few hours because there was bad weather. The kids were happy about this because they didn't want to go to Germany and have the risk of being sick. Lieutenants told the people to stay calm and just relax until they could land. Sam and Nicole were talking about what they wanted to do when they land because they didn't understand what the plague was, even though they were told about 50 times that it was a bad disease and it could kill you. Jaden and Kayla were talking about the weather, about whether or not this trip was a good idea because they could risk their kids getting sick, but their family needed them. Everyone, even though they were old, everyone in the family got vaccinated so they couldn't get the plague as easy. Brett was still trying to figure out what was going on, so he asked one of the attendants why they couldn't land. When one of the women went over to him, she said that the pilot said that there was bad weather. When Brett looked out the window, the weather was nice and perfectly fine. He was confused. Finally, after a few hours, they were told they were able to land. When they finally landed, they were parked. Brett, Nicole, and Sam went over to their parents so that they wouldn't get lost in the big crowd getting off the plane. When the passengers were all standing up and in a line to get off the plane, the attendant made an announcement that they were not allowed to get off the plane. People were talking, asking questions why they couldn't. The attendant said, "This plane is not an ordinary plane. There is no pilot, and we are not real. In order to get off this plane, you must answer 3 out of 5 questions correctly, but you get to choose a topic you would like. Animals, world history, religion, or math." Brett whispered to Jaden, saying, "Dad, I knew something was wrong. The attendants were not acting normal." Jaden looked at him for a few seconds and said, "Yes, I noticed that too. I don't know what Sam is going to do, though. She is so young and doesn't know much about anything. I'll talk to her and ask if Sam can be let go because of how young she is." After watching the other passengers being questioned, some people who didn't answer 3 out of 5 questions correctly were set aside, but the others were let go. and could leave the airport. First was Kayla. She picked she picked animals. She picked animals because she knows almost everything about animals. So you pick animals. Okay, question number 1. Name 4 types of animal groups. Kayla just looked at the attendant and then said birds, reptiles, amphibians, and mammals. The attendant nodded her head and said, okay, next question. Polo, cutting, barrel racing, sorting, and pole bending. What type of animal is involved in all these things? Kayla looked relieved and finally said horses. The attendant looked pleased that she had gotten it right. Okay, that's 2 out of 5. One more and you may go. Name 5 animals that start with O. Kayla stands there for a few minutes thinking and then says ocelot, octopus, otter, oak, and orangutan. The attendant nods and says, very good. Okay, you can go now. Now was Jaden. When he walked forward, the first thing he asked was, can Sam please go without answering questions? She is so young and doesn't know much about anything. The attendant looked at him and said, okay, that's fine. This is a one and only time. Now what topic do you choose? Jane said world history. The attendant looked through her note cards to find one that said world history. Once she found it, she said, okay, answer this question. Who is our current president? Jane thought about it and was getting embarrassed because he didn't know. Lucas Steelflex. The attendant looked at him while Brett was saying him over and over. No, that's wrong. Okay, next question. Who were the pharaohs? Jane gets an excited expression on his face and says, the rulers of ancient Egypt. The attendant looks taken back. That's correct. Okay, answer 2 more and you may go. Who was the last Tsar of Russia? Jane looked at her and was nervous, so he's trying to think of random Russian type of names. He couldn't think of any, so he just said, Nicholas. So he just said Nicholas II. Yes, that's correct. One more question and you can go. Who started World War II? He thought and started to get the wars mixed up, so he finally spit out Abraham Lincoln. He turned and looked at his kids, Brett and Nicole, and Brett gave him a bad look. The attendant said no. That's 2 wrong and 2 right. One more and that's your last one. Okay, what is Lance's side for the Indians called? Jane blurts out reservation. And the attendant says, yes, you can go. Brett walked up next and said math. The attendant looks through the cards and puts the math one on top and scans for a good question. Then spots one and says, okay, first question. What is the formula to find the area of a triangle? Brett looks surprised that the question was so easy, then says base times height divided by 2. The attendant looks happy and says, good, next question. Which number is bigger? 2, 2, 3, 5, 9, 2, 4, 5, or 9, 5, 0, 4, 3, 9, 4, 5. Brett asked for the numbers to be repeated, and they were. And he thinks for a few seconds and said, 9, 5, 0, 4, 3, 9, 4, 5. The attendant checks and says, okay, good. One more question correct, and you can go. Alright, draw me 5 mathematical symbols. The attendant gives Brett a pen and paper, and Brett draws an equal sign, a greater and less sign, a plus sign, and minus sign. Okay, that's correct. You may go. Then it is Nicole's turn. She picks religion. The attendant said, okay, what is the Great Schism? Nicole studied religion at school, and they knew about this. She said it was when the Eastern and Western churches split. The attendant looked shocked and said, yes, that's correct. Next question. What are 3 things that the monks did? Nicole knew this. She said the monks taught trade, made laws, and helped cultivate the land. The attendant said, yes, correct. One more question, you can go. Who was Mary? She wasn't sure, but she just looked and said, Mary. Yes, that's correct. Good job. Okay, you can go with your family. After everyone was regained together, they went into their bags and got into Germany to see their family and to be with them for a few days. When they got out of the airport, it wasn't how it was when they were last there a few years ago. It was weirder. The family walked around outside and looked around to find the street that their family lived on. They were in the middle of nowhere and didn't know where to go. Brett looked out into the distance and noticed that there were wild animals out there. He pulled out some food that giraffes liked, and next thing he knows, the little giraffe is running towards him. Brett fed the little giraffe and was petting and talking to it. Jane, Nicole, and Kayla and Sam were all looking around and not really paying attention to Brett that much. After a few minutes, they turned around to see if Brett was okay. They didn't see him anywhere, but they did see the little giraffe standing there looking at them. Jane said, "Do you guys think that I ate him?" The kids didn't know what to think. They tried to forget about it and move on with their trip and trying to find their family. They didn't see many people out because of the plague. They tried to hurry and avoid people to go to a safer place than out in the open where they could get sick. They finally found their family in a nice house that looked very clean and safe to be during this time of darkness. The family completely forgot about him after they stayed with their family for a few days and made sure everything was okay and went back to Oklahoma where it was nice and safe. When they got back, they never spoke of the plane, Brett, or anything that happened. They never went back to Germany again. When their family called them again, asked them to come back, they said no. Their family didn't know why, didn't ask, but they just left it at that. They still stayed in touch with each other and made sure that everything was okay in Germany and the plague was over. They even brought up Brett and asked if they saw that little giraffe. They said no. The end.